kids or whatever got plenty of Halloween candy this last Tuesday. And now we're into November. Unbelievable. So anyway, welcome to our program today. I am going to pull up the culture piece for this morning. And I'm not sure who read it last week, but I think Tara did. I'm going to ask Ashley Labram if you wouldn't mind reading our culture piece. So what I'd like you to do is read the first 6 under the heading of how are we an employer of choice? If she is there, did I lose her?
No, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
My son didn't want to go to school, and so there was like a thing. Anyways, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
So how are we an employer of choice? Is that those 6 right there?
Uh-huh.
Okay. We have and are great managers. The 4 keys of management: select talent, hire by talent, not experience, education, etc. Set expectations, define the right outcomes, not the steps. Motivate your people, focus on strengths, not mitigating weaknesses. Develop your team members, help them find the right fit for them, not the next rung on the ladder. Are we guarding our borders to keep people in or out? High retention of top talent. We want a robust immune system to protect our culture from people that don't fit. People want to work here and are naturally attracted to us. Recruiting is easy and we get to pick from the best of the best. Talent density. We have the best people and they love working together. Employees are highly engaged and they contribute much discretionary effort, heart, mind, and spirit. And then we see the whole person: heart, mind, spirit, conscious, the 8th habit.
Perfect. So what do you guys think about that? Anything, this is such a good document. We have some great documents that are in our system that if you are wondering, what you're supposed to be doing or how you can do it better, or how do we improve, these 4 pieces that we have specifically, that we've gone through really help us in our efforts to get the best people and become an employer of choice. Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a wording thing I think I would change on this if I can rock the boat here a little bit. I'd say hire by talent, primary, not just experience, education, etc. I mean, it is important to have experience in people that have a track record and whatnot. I just think to say not experience is a little nearsighted on that. But any other thoughts on that?
I would like to lean into it just a bit.
Yeah.
Hiring will as well. When a person has a very strong will and they have the experience, but they may not have as much experience, but they may have a strong talent. They have transferable skills, but they have the willingness to learn. A lot of times will outweigh skill with a person that's very ambitious and motivated, sometimes, depending on the scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah, and I think one of the necessary things is to define what those talents are that we need in those positions. So when we're hiring for talent, we are seeing the right things that we need to. So, but yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts on the piece? I just love the information that it gives us, to help us with our jobs, and to be able to have some clarity on some things that we're really striving to do. Any other thoughts?
I would say that I agree with Kyle, and yet I'd probably counter it to say I don't care if they have all the experience in the world and it's amazing and their education's amazing, and yet we get good enough that we could determine they don't have the right talent for the thing, then I would not hire them. So I do think it's a well, it's a quasi prerequisite to have potentially experience in education. And then I think with Tara's comments, obviously that is something we would be even more important than experience in education is temperament, character, personality, which is our kind of forms of talent. I would say the fit that's the right person for the job and that they fit with us, they kind of fit with us and want to work together well. But I think experience and education are really important too. I think we have such a predisposition to go to those that I don't think we lose anything by potentially acting like we're going to exclude them, because I think we have such a bias to go to education and experience anyway that we'll pick them up. And then I would say those cannot win the day, though. They probably still do for us, but I would like to get to a point where they wouldn't, that we would be good enough at understanding what talent and personal attributes we're looking for in a person in a role that we could focus on that. I don't think we're there yet, but I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
I actually think that's the intention of the document, is what you just said,
Yeah.
is to focus on talent. Don't just focus on these other things.
Yeah.
And to the point of ignoring talent. Yeah, and I think that's what is intended to be said here, but it could be thought of as don't look at it, experience and whatnot. And I think that track record is a way of identifying talent, and so which naturally comes through experience and whatnot. But I agree.
Joe.
Yeah, I've been talking about this a lot lately, but last December we kind of reached the peak of boomers reaching 65, and so I think the peak was 12,000 and some change per day of people turning 65, and now we're kind of on the downhill slope of the boomer generation. And what I mean by why I bring this up is because I believe that we have, in a large generation exiting the workforce, we are going to continue to have a skill gap. And I believe that we're going to need to stay very focused on alignment, on culture, on disposition, on excitement, on coachability, versus just pure hard skills or experience coming in the next 10 years, because those things are going to need to be rebuilt, as I see it. And that's kind of a generalization. That's not to say you're not going to be able to find people with the experience, is to say that there's not going to be as many of them that have the experience that you're looking for. And so I think it is very important that everything that we've said here, right, that the leaders that we're hiring are individuals that are finding people who are opting into our culture, opting into our goals, and are people who are figuring it out. And so I just wanted to say that that's an opportunity for us to continue to stay focused on alignment, a little bit more than just technical skills. And I think a little bit like what Ted was saying, it's I think we have a disposition to look at skills because it's the easiest and the simplest thing to look at is what have you done previously in roles. And, that doesn't necessarily always 1 + 1 = 2 on that one, because if they have experience getting similar types of outcomes or really know the details on how they got the outcomes, and were really engaged to it and why they were passionate about getting those outcomes, that might be a really good fit. But back to you guys. Just was an interesting extra add there.
Yeah. Well, and I think towards the end of number 1 there, motivate your people, focus on strengths, not mitigating weaknesses. And then here's the key piece: develop your team members, develop them. That's where we're going to really make a difference. Help them find the right fit for them, not the next rung on the ladder. And that's kind of the nature of business, is just finding that next rung and moving up, and but let's develop our people. Let's help them find the right fit for them, and not just the next rung on the ladder. So very good discussion. I appreciate that with the culture item. If there's nothing else, then we're going to turn it over to Ted for our lesson today.
Awesome. Thank you. Just kind of a roadmap ahead. I would say, I think we're going to do 2 more Fridays. So, well, today plus 2 more. So up through the 17th of November. I think let's take the Friday after Thanksgiving off. And then I would say after that, I think we'll probably shift to a first Friday of the month. We'll just try once a month. I don't want to get it too much into a weekly thing with leadership because I think it's less procedural than management, you know, and I don't know that there's a certain right answer. I think a lot of the stuff. So anyway, I probably intend to go to once a month starting in December, and we'll communicate that to you, but probably the first Friday of the month, and see how that feels and works out. But we are on for the next 2 weeks. For sure, and then we'll start that in December. The other thing I would say is that I don't think there's I think the right way to be a leader and a manager. With manager, there's certain stuff you have to do, and probably there is maybe with leadership a little bit too, but I think the right way to be a leader or a manager is to be true to yourself and, to your style and your way of doing things. I think there could be some stuff in your style that could be problematic for each of us, that we maybe need to not do that and maybe yell and scream at people or do, there's probably stuff that's not okay. But in general, I think we need to kind of be true to ourselves and not sit and try to pretend to be a leader like Carrie leads or like Ted leads or Kyle leads or somebody, you need to lead like you lead. And so I think there isn't one right way to be a leader. Now, I'm going to throw up and put up, and we'll discuss lots of different little traits that I've listed out over time, but some of those may not work for you and may not be appropriate even for the circumstances. So it's not only your personality and strengths and temperament, plus the circumstances, plus the situation with your team and their personalities, because there's different ways to lead different people. So I just want to say, as we do put up lists, just keep that in mind, that they're lists, there's something to think about, and you get a pick out of this list of ingredients, the things that you think most benefit you. So I just kind of want that disclosure there. So last week after I got off the call, I think you guys talked about leadership versus management. So let's go back to that briefly and kind of tie into that. And then today we'll talk about some leadership traits that we throw up there. So I think sometimes it's easiest to differentiate between leadership and management by talking about what management is more than leadership. So let's talk about that briefly. What do you guys think? What is management? In your mind, what's management? I might share my screen and jot some of this down so we can have like a whiteboard. And as I'm looking down, you can either just start speaking if I'm not looking.
Yeah, I think management is maintaining what's already kind of in place. So managing people, managing your general operations, it's very much keeping the status quo and everything running smoothly, versus leadership where it's sometimes being disruptive and changing the way things are done.
Yeah, Kyle?
I like what was just said. I think of management as kind of more to the day to day. And leadership is more visionary. It's more strategic. Management perhaps more tactical.
Yep. Yeah, I think management is about maintaining accountability to procedures and to processes and tactics, and leadership is more about influencing um, and leading a group of people.
Thank you.
I've got 2 cents on this, if I may. I mean, management, I think, is all about hitting company objectives. It's about, I guess, road mapping. It's about trying to figure out that. I mean, that's the day to day. That's the stuff that makes the clock tick and makes the business turn. It's the stuff that has to get done in order for the business to survive. And if you're a good manager, then you can do that well, and your team is succinct, and they're able to work well together. Processes flow well. It's very, yeah, I think tactical is the right word, but it's also methodical. It's things run well. And then I guess the difference between that and leadership is I think is more about development. I think if you're a good leader, then you care about your team. You look at trying to see what's their growth potential, and not just the team, I mean, just in management, but if you're in a position where you have control over more, forward-looking things, you're able to look at maybe what hurdles are going to be in the future, what you can prepare your team and the company for, and if you have good leadership, then you're able to weather the storm before the storm shows up.
Thank you. Did Joe have, there was another hand up that I think, but I don't
Yeah,
see.
Joe's hand was up.
Yeah, I would put coach under leadership. I think we have a lot of the good things, but what I mean by that is that management's job is again to adherence and objectives, kind of like we've talked about. It's managing the outcomes, and leadership is to get the best out of our people, is to coach, mentor, develop, and we've got those things. And because it's not just best, but it's best most. And it's interesting because when you put these things is if you want to say management is to get the most and leadership is to get the best, that may not be, that those would be the ways that I would look at it is that management, we need to get the most out of our people, but is it the most really? It's the most best out of them. And I always think of this in terms of like the, professional sports. Professional sports, they exist. Do they exist to get the best out of their players, or they exist to win games? Well, it's kind of both, right? And I would say that management is winning games, and I would say leadership is helping your team individually contribute to that win.
Thank you. Any others I missed? So I put a few down. Oh, Tara?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted. You can go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
no. I was wanting your comments.
I just kind of wanted to chime in a bit on the leadership. And I guess it kind of coincides with management as well. But I feel like a leader is able to see in others what they're unable to see in themselves. And you try to develop them from the inside out by having a vision of the ultimate goal and how to get there and thinking outside of the box, but just seeing the best in your team and being challenged and achieve the part of just seeing more in them than what they see in themselves. Coupled with everything that everyone else said as well, I agree with.
Thank you.
We also said that we wanted people to self-select in. If you develop them from inside out, they'll self-select in or self-select out, because you're helping them pull out what it is that they want, and they can more easily identify that, this may not be what I really want. If you're having those inside out conversations, they may self-select, and that's wonderful. It's also can be a challenge too, but it's that inside out model is everything, because then you're leading by the heart, not leading by not leading just by the numbers.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. So a couple more things on management, and then we'll leave that behind and move on to just leadership alone. So I put a couple other things. I think it's organization, control, and maximization of things. And then I just wrote in, I do think when we manage somebody, we basically make them a thing. We treat them like an object. And I think leadership's more a whole person approach. And again, it's okay. And I think we all need to be managed a little bit, and we need to have some level of, now I guess ideally I would say we would manage ourselves, but that's still being managed. But I think you can build clear outcomes and operational boundaries that I think we can manage ourselves. But I would say when we are being managed, that we become a thing. Management is the process of dealing with or controlling things or people. Managers need to plan, monitor, coordinate, solve, hire, fire, and we manage things. So that's management. Leadership, when you say, oh, they're a leader, normally we think of position, right? Is leadership a position or formal authority?
No, anybody can be a leader.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And it's very, that's a confusing, I think that's very, 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 very true. You are a leader. Leaders, I think true leadership is informal. It is not based on formal leadership or hierarchy. And yet sometimes we grant to a degree a leadership bestowal upon people, but through a position. But then it's really incumbent upon you, if you're granted a position of authority over people, that you earn their trust and you become a leader. And then other people are never granted that, and yet there's truly the influencer and leader of people. And so that's that confusing thing that's like, well, it's kind of based on position a lot of times, and yet it isn't. So, and hopefully you get the nuance that we're talking about, that. But I think it's dangerous to fall back and just say, well, leadership is just authority and position. And it can be synonymous with those at times, but that's a dangerous place to think, oh, leadership's granted by getting a promotion or getting a position and being in charge of stuff. So nothing to do with titles or formal authority. It's not anything to do with seniority or one's position in the hierarchy of a company. It really doesn't have much to do with personal attributes. Again, we're going to talk a lot about personal attributes, but there's not a one formula recipe that fits for everybody. It's going to be what's appropriate for you and based on your team and the situation and circumstances. One thing I would say is, I think a leader is someone people follow. I think that's true. If you're leading a group of people across the desert or in through the forest, let's say you get stranded in an airplane and the plane crashes and some of them decide to hike out and some decide to stay in, and the people that leave, they're probably following somebody that says, I can get us out of here. And so I think part of leadership is that people are going to be willing to follow. You guys agree with that?
I
Yeah, I
think
agree
that's
with
the
them.
definition of a leader. We even have children's song about it. Following.
Do you have to have followers? Do you have to have followers to be a leader?
I do think that you can't lead people places. I mean, is that mean that you don't have the title, right? And I think you do need to have leaders, or you need to have followers to be a leader. So
I think
I don't
when,
think at every turn you have one. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say, in this day and age, when you think of influencers just on the internet, okay, whether they're right or wrong or whatever, some of these people, I mean, they were never given a title, they were never given authority, they just started something and end up with millions of followers. And I would think that they're big influencers. They do have leadership. Again, whether it's right or wrong is a moot point, but it's really about the fact that they've created something and lots and lots of people are following them.
Kyle?
And there's not a leader for everybody, too. It's a kind of a love language thing, I think, too, where certain people will be able to lead certain people. But I don't know that there is a leader that all people just follow.
Hmm.
Yeah, even if you go up, into the, let's say, into the religious, which is kind of at a high level, or political, the president of the United States, that's a very divisive position. You've got about half the people at best that like him and often half hate him. And you look at religious leaders, whether it's Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus Christ or Abraham or Moses, so different people that are considered religious leaders. Not everybody on the planet follows all of them. So I don't think there is a universal leader. Even God is a divisive. You say, well, deity is a divisive. There's a good chunk of people that says there is no God, and other people, and people will go to war and fight over these things. But so yeah, I don't know that there is a universal leader that everybody will follow, even if forced to, which, they still may. That's back to I think we talked about the Viktor Frankl thing, leadership versus, or freedom versus liberty. We could force, like in North Korea or some kind of a place, and even the whole earth could come under a thing where it's like we force everybody into compliance in a very harsh state with mind, but you still really can't capture the way they perceive events, the way they think about stuff. And I wonder, we probably are never going to get everybody to believe the same thing. There's people that believe the world is flat still. They literally think the world is flat. And you could probably take them into space and they still wouldn't change their mind. So that's a good comment, Kyle. I don't think there is not a leader. There's not a one size fits all. There's not a leader that everybody will buy into and follow, even up to God. You guys agree with that?
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
So let's talk about why
Jessica
follow.
had a comment as well.
Okay. Sorry, Jessica. I don't see any hands up. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say with leadership, if we look at things like Steve Jobs is someone I love to follow from a marketing perspective. Sometimes their circle is very small in terms of who will follow them, and that's part of being, again, a disruptive leader and changing the way things are done. Is that sometimes that following will be small to begin with because people don't necessarily understand or are comfortable with changing a status quo, and then it changes obviously as success comes. But that was just my 2 cents. Sometimes there isn't a big entourage of followers. It's just a small group that trust in the leader to show why it is that they're doing things the way they are.
And you don't need everybody to follow you or believe even to change the world, so to speak. It could be a very small thing. There's a book on podcasts that I'm going through by Tim Ferriss, who does a podcast, and he's kind of taken his greatest podcast and made a book out of them. And I've talked about it that was where the Tony Robbins thing we read from. But in there, one of the sections is on getting 1,000 followers, and that's the key thing on marketing. As long as you have 1,000 passionate, highly engaged followers, that is the tipping point in his mind, and they go into the science of that from a marketing perspective. But I do think, Stephen Covey, I typed up here, talked about your circle of influence versus your circle of concern. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm worried about, I don't love the war in Ukraine, and I could probably do more about it. I don't like the stuff in Israel and Palestine. I don't like the stuff in North Korea. There's a lot of things I don't like that I'm concerned about, but I don't really have much influence over that besides voting for my elected officials. And I could go protest, and I'm sure there's stuff I could do, like that little girl, Greta, whatever, from Scandinavia that wanted to change the environment. And she was a young girl and became a huge mover and changer of things. So we can affect stuff sometimes. I don't want to, I think we tend to opt for victimhood, and it's like, well, I can't do anything about that. And so we just opt out. But I also think it's good to understand where can you really make a difference and where is stuff that you're worried about, but that you don't have a lot of direct control over, even though you could probably potentially exert more control over the environment or carbon emissions or lack of freedoms in certain countries or war and violence, poverty, child abuse, all kinds of stuff. So, but I think that there's also stuff that's like, well, I have quite a bit of control and influence over myself. I can probably influence people in my family. I can probably influence people that I work with. I think it's valuable to think about where you have more influence versus where stuff you care about and you're worried about, but not. And again, we could expand that circle of influence and sometimes move outside of an area that's smaller. Even if we're a young girl in Scandinavia, we could become a global figurehead for climate change. So it's not that we're total victims, but I think it's good to understand the difference between where we have influence and where we're worried about things. I miss any hands during that? All right,
No.
so why do we follow people? Why would you follow somebody?
Trust. Like, to go back to your analogy about being lost in the rainforest, like, you're going to follow somebody you feel will actually get you out, not get you lost more.
And don't I put safety as a function of that's related, I think, to trust.
Definitely.
And I'm going to put before Kyle's, I'm going to be also being worthy of trust, which is, as we talk about, more than saying trustworthy or integrity, we kind of here at our company talk about being worthy of trust and what that implies. Kyle?
Say belief in a vision.
Awesome. Mariah, it looks like you're next.
I'd say relatability. I think we tend to follow people that we relate to and almost see like a part of ourselves in, that we see like a extension of ourselves, kind of, or maybe what we want to be in ourselves, just somebody we relate to. I think we tend to follow.
We also have Maria, and then Jessica.
Okay, go ahead, guys. And then Shantae after that.
To me, it's depending on what that leader is guiding you through. Some people want to be guided. They're kind of like lost souls, I want to say. So they're looking for that leader who's going to help them go where they need to go.
Thank you. And one of my favorite analogies for that is four-wheeling, like in Moab, because some stuff, it's like, well, I could take you mountain biking or snowmobiling, like when I do that, but it's a lot of those things are at high speed. So I could still be a wise guide to say, okay, here's how to snowmobile. Here's where we should go. Follow me, stay in my tracks. Here's how to not get stuck. But the thing I like about like Jeeping in Moab is it's so slow, a lot of it. And some of it, you get down to a spot where it's like, if we went with Carrie, he'd probably say, okay, I want you to come to this rock right here, and I want you to turn, and he's going to stand outside the Jeep, and he's going to say, okay, turn your wheel a little bit more, okay, there, I want your tire right there. Now accelerate at 3 miles an hour and roll over. It's very, very particular, and it's kind of slow. And I think it kind of shows the metaphor that there's a lot of value of a wise guide, one that's not in the Jeep, that's standing outside, that understands exactly how Jeeps work and how this obstacle that's been through, maybe it's Fins and Things or Hell's Revenge or Poison Spider Mesa or some of these trails, and they know exactly how to get a Jeep up and over something that looks impossible. And I think leadership can be a wise guide. One, that they are hopefully ahead of us, that they can maybe see what's down the path, or that they've been there before and that they're not us. So I think those are all great things with that. Okay, was it Jessica
Kevin-
and then
Jessica,
Shantae?
yep.
Yeah, I just think holistic alignment. So in that, what I mean is not only do they have to align with us in terms of what the vision is and getting there, but on a interpersonal level as well. They share common values that align with us and our integrity. I think that's really important. Those two pieces balancing each other out. So who they are as a person, as well as where we want to go, need to align with what we personally or professionally hold ourselves.
Thank you. Shantae?
And I don't know how this fits in because maybe this is a part of trust or, relatability or something, but I think there has to be a certain amount of transparency. We have to really believe that they're being truthful in whatever their vision is, or that they're leading us in a certain direction because they're being honest or they're looking out for our well-being, and we believe that.
I think we've got Techie, and then I've got a comment.
Okay. For me, it's also impact. Leaders commits you to act and change and become different from where you are and change your state. So if a leader doesn't have that kind of impact, where I'm not a different person, that they're not really a leader to me.
Thank you. Joe?
I'm going to say kind of feedback loop. What I mean is they either, they consult or at least inform. Because if we're on the path of wherever it is that we're going, and it's not, honestly, it's really hard to follow someone if I don't have communication, and that's the most important thing for me is understanding where we're at, where we're heading, and that feedback loop is for me one of the most important. But it's not just feedback, it's also that they consult and inform. So consult where necessary and inform where necessary. And so it's like, it's a lot easier to trust that leader when there's that feedback loop for me.
Thank you. Tara?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of that a bit. I'm more apt to follow or / submit to that individuals that's leading by example. If I see that they are leading themselves in the right direction, I'm more apt to be a part of that team and follow. I consider that also a method of submission.
Yeah, I think that ties back to what Carrie was talking about, social influencers and stuff. I think that's a lot of what people think. They're like, that's a form of leading by example, even if it's bad, but that's why people are probably watching them. They're like, I want to be rich and famous like them, or I want to go on trips, or I want to be healthy or skinny or attractive or wear that makeup, or I think there's a lot of stuff about that with example. And whether people that write books, or whether it's on fitness or wealth or relationships, you're like, oh, I want a good marriage. I'm going to follow that person because I think that what they have to say is either valuable or that they themselves are an example. So that's great. Yeah, Mariah?
Yeah, kind of like in the same vein that you guys are talking about. When I did UPW with Tony Robbins, one of the things that really stuck with me was how he talked about you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Find somebody who's already successful at that and learn from them. So I think being successful is definitely a trait in that people follow in leaders. You obviously want them to be successful in whatever you're looking for guidance in.
Give you a good Tony Robbins quote there: success leaves clues. He says it a lot. Thank you. Any ones I missed? Okay, a couple other thoughts I
John
had.
Had his hand up. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks. I don't know where it fits. I'm kind of like Shantae. There's a difference between coaching and coaches and leaders, right? Not all coaches are leaders, just like not all managers are leaders. Uh, there's something to be said about confidence and charisma. You know, sometimes if you don't have that right mix, you could have all the experience in the world. You could have examples of what you've done, but you don't necessarily lead people, or people don't necessarily follow you. So, you know, I think that a little bit of confidence and charisma doesn't hurt.
Awesome. Thank you. A couple of things I was going to say was part of being worthy of trust, and actually we'll talk about later 5 C's that I have, but 2 of them I think definitely are competence and confidence. I think people, you know, and there's nothing worse than somebody that's highly competent and highly incompetent. I mean, that's probably the most dangerous person on the planet. Someone that's like, I know what I'm doing, I know where I'm going, and they literally take you off a cliff. And so the worst combination of anything on the planet to follow, I believe, is somebody with, well, or lack of integrity, somebody with no moral compass. That would be a really bad thing to follow. Or that they have no idea where they're going, or they have no idea what to do, and yet they have a high confidence and probably a lot of charisma that they get you to follow them, but that's all they have. So I think part of being worthy of trust is to have the confidence that people will believe that, and you have the competence to know where you're going. That would be another one I would say is they are going where we want to go. So like there's a lot of people that probably have millions of followers on social media, and I would totally dismiss them. I'm like, they're idiots. I don't want anything to do with them. And you know, that doesn't mean I'm right, but I have no interest in that. And there's no affinity or alignment between us. We talked about that too. But I think part of that, you know, you think about the crashed airplane. Remember, I said half the people wouldn't even leave. They stayed at the airplane. Like that's the method to get saved. We need to stay with the plane. There's another group that says, no, we have to get ourselves out of here and follow. And so the people that stay at the plane aren't going to follow the person that wants to march off into the forest, because that person's not going where they want to go. They want to stay put. Another group does. And so they pick the person that seems to have the most competence and confidence, and they're going to follow that person through the woods to try to hopefully get out. Maria, did you have a comment?
I did. So last week when we watched the YouTube video, I brought up the fact that the video reminded me a lot of like the cult leaders and like Charles Manson. And a lot of being a leader is that you bring to the table, like John said, you know, that charisma to like convince people of what you believe in. So a lot of times I see leaders as like salespeople. You go out and you find your market target, and then you go out and you convince them on why they should follow you. And I feel like leaders do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Another comment from John.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I just think that that's the reason why we have these bullet points. It's because you, like Ted said, you could have high charisma, high confidence, but be a very dangerous individual because you're going to lead people into something that's not good. Having a mix of all of these things, being trustworthy, showing signs that you have experience, like being a wise guide, having holistic alignment, and having the charisma and the confidence to put all these things together and put a plan in place, people will follow you, and that makes a good leader. Having just maybe one of these things might not be the best. Having a combination of these things makes for a good leader. Maybe quiet confidence is what you would say. You know, a person who's got the charisma, but being quiet, quietly confident in his ability to do the thing that he needs to do. So yeah, if we pick it apart and we just take one of these things.
Oh, we just lost you. Oh, but maybe that was on purpose.
No, I don't know why my system muted it, but basically the last thing I said was having one of these things does not necessarily make you a leader, one of these bullet points,
Yeah.
but having a combination of them makes you a good leader.
Okay, thank you. And we will talk about later, probably multiple times throughout this journey, level 5 leaders from Jim Collins, the author and researcher in his book, Good to Great, created the term level 5 leader and shows that that's someone with indomitable will, that they have a will and a desire for the company to succeed, but they have personal humility and a willingness to be like you kind of said, a quiet leader. It's not the big egoic, big personality, what we think of as a kind of a leader, someone that's in all the business magazines, and the true leaders that led great companies, and especially companies that made the transformation from good companies to great companies, had this leadership quality that we'll look at here. But I think it's in that vein of quiet leadership, but with a very strong will, like Tara talked about earlier today, that they have an indomitable will, but it's not a will for fame and glory and fortune for themselves. It's for the company and the mission to succeed. Okay, any other hands that I missed before I move on? Okay. One thing I just thought, we kind of hit this, I typed this up while you were talking. I think that we follow people that they're going to get us something that we want or need, or that they're going somewhere. I think we've just, in case we didn't fully cover that. All right, well, let's talk about outcomes. So I think this also shows why I think this makes the point better than us making the point that how leadership doesn't have to be a position, because you may have a boss and they may be none of these things to you, that you're like, so I'm going to comply. You've got my back and you've got my compliance, but you haven't really captured my heart and my mind, my energy. And I think that's one of the beauties of, I think that's why culture is important and valuable in a company, but I also think that's where the true opportunity with management leadership is. If you can capture your people's imaginations, you can capture their hearts and their minds and their spirits and their discretionary effort, that they really want to follow you. And I think it's this type of stuff that does that, not they're my boss and they control my paycheck, and which we are going to comply. There's a difference. Maybe I'll put that compliance versus followership, maybe. Okay, so I think that this shows why it isn't about hierarchy or position. I think it's these things that you'd really follow. So if we're going to figure out, you're going to make someone a leader, let's say you start your own company and now you're going to hand it over to someone to be the leader of it, or you're going to have some cause or some social cause that you're big of, that you've done a whole new thing of, whether it's a charity to save animals, or it's about social injustice or women's rights or birth control, or whatever you've got your cause or your business, and you're going to hand it to somebody to be the leader of that and carry it forward. Even if it's, let's say you start a religion and now I've got my religion and I'm going to have someone be my leader of my religion. What kind of outcomes are you looking for out of that person that you just brought in to lead your business, your cause, your whatever the thing is that you are most passionate about? And now you're looking for a leader and you're going to have them lead this thing. What are some outcomes that you think that you're looking for leadership? Shantae, were you first, I think?
Growth.
Yeah.
Growth. it's not enough to just, we're not looking for management and status quo, right? That's a like a steward. Well, I think that's the difference between a conservator and a steward. A conservator is going to keep something and they're just going to preserve the status quo. And a steward is going to take something and amplify, right? Status quo. Okay, thank you. Who else had a hand up?
Kyle's got his. And
Kyle?
then Techie.
I'd say alignment to your vision. Well aligned.
Which it then tells you, I mean, it's aligned to what? And then it's to, even if it's a religion or a social cause or a business, right? It's still going to have a purpose, mission, vision, values. And that tells you, to me, that comes full circle why those things are so important. I mean, my business formula, if you were to bring me in as a consultant or say, okay, Ted, we're going to now have you be CEO of this thing that we did, I would start with, it's always the why. I'm going to start with, what is our vision, purpose, values? What are our belief system? How do we operate? How do we think here? That's always where I would start. Then I would work on who. Then it's about the people, and you get the right who. And then it's strategy. And you then build processes and things to do that. But it's always, for me, in that order. And this kind of, otherwise you're like, what are we aligning to? And so I think that alignment is so key. And then that's also speaks to the point that you have to have something to align to. So you have to have clarity of purpose, values, mission, vision, where we're going. And I talked about that threefold thing that any religion or business or anything has, which is, where are we? Where are we wanting to go? And what's our plan to get there? I mean, that's the formula of any religion, right? But as well as a business. What's the status of being alive? What does it mean to be like, where did I come from and why am I alive? What's my ultimate goal and potential and destiny? And what's my plan to get there? And that's what religion tries to speak to, those existential things. But it's the same formula for business. We're a $26 million staffing agency in 3 markets. We want to be a $150 million staffing agency that disrupts labor services. What's our plan to get there? And that's our 3 thing. Okay, there were some comments. I don't know who's in order.
Techie
Go
first.
ahead.
Yeah, I think after you discover the why, it's the third, I believe, is actualization, is realizing those changes, those plans, and ensuring that those happens. And that can happen on an individual level where you're actualizing your goals and bringing to reality, or an organization level is making those goals and plans a reality as well.
Almost a form of management, but it's much more than that, because it's like yonder is something unorganized. Here's my vision, mission, purpose, values. Here's what I want. Go bring it, go make it happen. Thank you. Was John next?
Joe, and then John.
John.
We may have already said these, but I do think that they're worth noting, which is clear communication. Because it's like align mission, purpose, and you did say it, but I don't think we have it kind of captured, which is clear communication. The second thing that I have is a derivative of 3, which is not only can they make it happen, they can empower their people to make it happen in their, because leaders can only be leaders. They can't be everywhere. And that's why we have teams, and those teams need to be empowered to act in the right direction without checking in with that leader all the time, which means clear communication. And that also means that they're empowered to act and empowered to get the outcomes that they have been put in front of them as part of the scope of their responsibilities. I know it's both management and leadership, but it is part of it. So
let me just get this in, then I think John was next. Exceed desired, expected. Okay, John.
I think Joe at that last little bit, he kind of took it away. Mine was just simply results. And it goes along with what Shantae had said and what Teki and now Joe had said, which is, growth, you see the progression. It doesn't necessarily have to be a complete result, but it has to lead the way to a result. You can see that it's going there. Actualization means, they are keeping the promises that they've made. Leaders usually will make promises based on their, vision. And so results, they speak for themselves. And that's basically what people are looking at. Look at right now, Disney CEO that came back. First thing he did was, he shut down a few of the decisions that had been made by the prior CEO. But now Disney's embattled. Their stocks are falling. And so even though people wanted him back, now people are questioning because it did not quite get to where they wanted. And I guess that also speaks to vision. If you promise quick results and you don't deliver, then that might hurt. But if you temper expectations and you decide we're going to have a slow growth, you will see these things, please trust me, then people wouldn't be so quick to turn on that CEO,
Yes, that's good. Thank you. Shantae?
I think this could be one and the same with growth, but I think it deserves its own bullet point, diversification. Growth is growth within your people, growth within the business as far as revenue goes, but diversification, I think we're really good at doing that. We have a very diverse group of people and we have a diverse group of service offerings and multiple, service offerings and divisions and things like that. So I think that's important too.
And Tara has her hand up as well.
I just want
Okay.
I want to get this down before I. So back to my formula, the why, who, what. The key to what, and that's where strategy comes in. The two things you want. I mean, the point of any business is to attract or to find and keep a customer and do so with margin and have it be sustainable. And that's where we've talked a lot about lately, diversification and differentiation. Both of those create sustainability and margin. So sustainability, oops, let it do it. Sorry. Okay, sorry, Tara, I just wanted to get that down. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Whether you're a team player, client, and you are following the leader, I think one of the strong outcomes is you empower your team. They feel encouraged, they feel prepared, they feel appreciated, and they feel connected to the organization, the business, even if it's the family. When you're a true leader, you instill those things in a person where they feel that confidence within themselves.
Did I miss? I put that up under empower, number 5 here. Did I capture that?
I don't know. I may be redundant at this point.
Oh, well, no, I just want to make sure I captured your thoughts, and I may have missed some of it because I was putting it up under empower. That people feel appreciated, connected, and then they feel, I forgot the last thing you said because I was asking the question.
Appreciated, connected, and encouraged.
Thank you. Couple things I wrote: attract and keep top talent. I think that's a key thing for a leader. I think a true measure of a leader obviously is results. And I think the means. So at the end of the day, if you're going to measure one thing, you're going to measure results. That's what I would measure. And then if I was going to go deeper than that, I would say, what causes results? Where do results come from? I think results come from top talent. I think championship teams are made. They have a good strategy. And, I do think you probably hate the sports analogies, but I think they're so interesting. because I think we can learn a lot from sports. You looked at I think championship teams, the people that win the NBA finals, they have a lot of good talent on their team, but it isn't enough. Like when the San Antonio Spurs played, when LeBron James went down to Miami and he was going to buy a championship, they didn't win because they didn't play as a team. Same thing that happened to the Los Angeles Lakers when Karl Malone went there to join Shaq and Kobe. They didn't win, even though they had all the best talent, because they didn't play as a team. And so teamwork and alignment and efficiency can do that, and that's part of strategy as well. But at the end of the day, it wasn't Joe and I and Ivan playing for the San Antonio Spurs or the Atlanta Hawks or the Utah Jazz. It was professional basketball players with a lot of talent. So I do think results come from attracting and keeping top talent. I think it comes from inspiring, engaging, and gaining commitments from top talent. And then the last thing I would say on talent is to develop, align, and focus top talent. So talent's a big part of that, because I think that's what causes results, is where people, and then it goes back to the alignment to say, well, we're rowing together. Everybody understands that's that communication and coordination loop, that there's a feedback loop Joe talked about, that we're all on the same page. We have good coordination and communication. We're rowing together. I think that's another, back to a sports thing, those rowing teams, that's such an interesting thing. Or like the bobsled teams, that they are just in complete unison, that they are moving and syncing together. And if you have one guy that's rowing at a different cadence on a rowing team, it screws everything up. So we have to be rowing together, but we've also got to have talent. And then we've also got to know where we're going, and you've got to have someone calling out the cadence. And so it takes things, but that all leads to results. If you're leading a team, you want to win. If you're leading a business, you want to win and succeed, and you want to attract and keep customers. You want to gain margin. You want to win in the business community in the form of revenue and profits. And then that comes again from people and talents, but it's also about the alignment of people there. All right, we're out of time. Any last comments? And I can send this out to you guys with also the notes I had from before. Any last comments that I missed before we wrap up? I'm going to stop sharing.
Kyle's got a comment.
Kyle, go ahead.
I just think there's got to be an element of love and care that a leader has to have for people. I think that's partly why people follow leaders, is that they know that they care about them, and they care about the business and the results and all these other things. There's a love for it, and I think it's hard to put a finger on exactly what that is, but I think we know it when we see it.
Yeah. This kind of goes back to being worthy of trust, of the trust that we give, and we want to know that our trust will not be taken advantage of, and that I think if you're going to follow someone, you want to be taken care of to a degree. Even if I'm a strong, empowered individual, if I'm going to submit some level of my autonomy to you, I want to know that that's in a well place, and that you care about me, and that I can trust you. So great final comments. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Great comments. You guys kind of taught the lesson today, so those are the best ones. So thank you. And I will send this paper I wrote out to Kerry, and he'll push it out this afternoon probably.
Yep. And I'll put it on the in the team's under management training as well.
Okay. So awesome. Thank you. And again, we are the next 2 weeks. So we'll be here next Friday, and then the Friday after that. And then we'll take the Friday after Thanksgiving off, and then we'll probably go to a first Friday of the month rotation if you missed that part. So, okay. Thanks, you guys. Have a great weekend and a great Friday.
Take care.
Thanks, Ted.